Good evening, all. In my continuing series on 1970s dystopian science fiction movies, we come to one of the poorer entries, and that's the quote unquote follow up to Westworld from 1973, which was 1976's Futureworld. Although it's an interesting concept, it really just doesn't gel, and I'll tell you why. But I'll give you some background first. For one thing, they couldn't get Michael Crichton to write or direct this time. He was busy doing other things. Um, it stars Peter Fonda as journalist Chuck Browning. It stars Blythe Danner as TV reporter, first slash personality Tracy Ballard. Stuart Margolin plays a character just known as Harry. Arthur Hill is the somewhat genial Mr. Duffy, who is the public relations man for Delos, the same company that Westworld took place in. And John Ryan is a scientist, rather frightening character called Dr. Schneider. Yul Brynner reprises his role briefly as the gunslinger, only in a dream sequence. And it was directed by Richard T. Heffron and produced by Samuel Arkoff, which should have given me a clue because Samuel Z. Arkoff and American International made some of the worst science fiction movies ever, including things like Robot Monster. So you know you're not in for a great time when you see that name as the producer. It was the only thing they kept really from the original Westworld is it was composed by the same guy, Fred Karlin, and you can hear some echoes in the music score of the original Westworld theme, which aren't bad. I got to say that the soundtrack is pretty good. It's interesting enough. It takes place. It's obviously, I believe it's 10 years after the Westworld catastrophe, quote unquote, and obviously, Delos got a lot of bad publicity, mainly due to Chuck Browning, Peter Fonda's character, who wrote a scathing series of articles about what happened, and now they've been invited back to the new Delos, which they completely shut down Westworld, but they revived Roman world and medieval world, and they've added two new worlds, Spa World, where old people can feel like they're young again and are rejuvenated, and Future World, where you get to experience space flight and like go skiing on Mars and a number of other kind of silly things, explore the moon, do spacewalks. All this in a safe environment because it's not real. But there's also something sinister going on. We don't really find out about that. There's in the opening, Peter Fonda's character, Chuck Browning, is approached by a strange character only known as Frenchie. And he says, I need you to meet me. I've got some information on Future World that you might be interested in. And he meets with him, but he's been stabbed. And all he says, he says, what happened? Peter Fonda says, what happened? And he just says, Delos, and then he dies. He arranges with his editor to be sent to Delos, and unfortunately, he doesn't know that Tracy Ballard is going too until he breaks it to sort of a meeting and kind of demands to be taken along as well. She's upset because she wanted this to be her exclusive. Even though she's only going to visit, she's not taking a film crew with her this time. If she finds things are good, she'll take a film crew the next time and go back. And so they both go, and they have an inimical relationship. Apparently, they were lovers a long time ago, and he refers to her as Socks because she wore a hideous pair of red checked socks on their first date or something like that. They go to Delos and meet with Arthur Hill's character, Mr. Duffy. They actually met him in the meeting, and he's saying, I hope you'll give us a good review this time. They say, well, that depends on what happens and what our experience is. And so they go to Delos, and there's also a contest winner who's kind of an obnoxious guy who we see in the first scene he won a game show that was hosted actually by the real Alan Ludden called The Big Bounce. And he wins a trip to Delos, and he's being like really obnoxious, and he's telling him, he can't wait to have sex with robot girls and things like that. He's an admirer of Tracy's, and he starts kind of sort of quasi hitting on her on the flight, which Chuck encourages him to do, and that kind of gets her pissed off. Um, but that's kind of minor. They arrive at Delos and they're shown around. They're given a behind the scenes tour of all of the. Well, first they go on a trip to Futureworld, which they've selected, and they're put in like these phony space suits that look really bad. I mean, these are like really cheesy looking things that look like a kid's costume, and put on the rocket ship, and they pretend that it takes off and everything. All this is run by, and they don't know this yet, by robots. Um, they explain to him later on that they got rid of humans in the control system because they figured part of what happened in Westworld was the result of human error. And so taking humans out of the loop, having robots run everything, eliminates that, in their minds, that possibility. Um, they go and they're doing things like they have a holographic chess game where the players seem like real people, and like a knight is actually mounted on a horse and he stabs the pawn to death that he takes, and then the uh, rook is actually a guy up in a tower with a crossbow, and he shoots the knight. It's kind of funny, and not particularly well done, I must say, but interesting. And then they have like a phony boxing match where they have these two robots, and they have gloves on, and they're controlling the fists. And because he's distracted by Duffy, you're not paying attention. Blythe Danner beats the crap out of the boxer controlled by Peter Fonda, and she's going, "Yeah, what a great uppercut!" And she's like, kind of taking glee in the fact that her boxer beat his. Like basically like a giant Rock'em Sock'em robots, only with real robots. Um, that scene I thought was very funny, and it was very well done. There are some good special effects in this movie, I should say. So not all of it looks, cheesy and cheap. The effects that are in, some of the worlds, like, medieval world and Roman world and spa world to some extent, all look pretty good. Also, the little trams that take them to these worlds are very nice and kind of futuristic looking, like a sort of like a people mover from Walt Disney World. But they're interesting. They're kind of cool, and they have the Delos logo on them. And anyway, now they're going to go after they do their little brief stint at Futureworld, Duffy's going to take them on the behind the scenes tour, which he proceeds to do. He shows them, medieval world and Roman world and spa world and the control rooms, which, again, Chuck has this kind of thing. He senses there's something wrong. He wants to get some inside info. So he asks Tracy to seduce one of the workers in the control center, and she's saying, "Oh, come on, that's ridiculous." And he says, "What? You can't do it?" And she says, "Of course I can do it." And goes up and starts flirting with one of these guys, and leaning in and smiling and acting sexy, and he doesn't seem to respond very much. And that's when they reveal that these people are all robots. She says, "Oh, you're married?" He says, "No." She says, "Do you think I'm pretty?" He says, "Yes." She says, "Will you go out with me?" He says, "No." Just thinking of blank. And then Duffy reveals that these people are all robots. Uh, and then after that, they're shown back to their hotel room, and they're sharing when they go up into their separate suites. They have a little bit of a brief quasi-romantic moment, but she's still being very put off. She's still kind of pissed off that he came along, and thinks he's superfluous. Um, and then um, they both kind of pass out after their dinner, and it turns out that they've been drugged, and a couple other guests who came, a Russian general and a Japanese diplomat, have also been drugged, and they're all passed out, and they are taken by these people in kind of red surgeons outfits with masks to a strange room with like a tilting table and an x-ray machine, and given like really extensive medical exams. The fact that they're measuring everything, their blood pressure, their DNA, their intestinal system, their respiratory system, everything, every inch of them, their skin, their epidermis, their eye color, everything is being measured down to like the nth degree by these doctors. And then Blythe Danner screams, and Peter Fonda rushes up and says, "What's wrong?" She said, "Oh, I had this horrible nightmare that these doctors were looking at me and they were hurting me, and I couldn't do anything to stop it." And so, it's just a nightmare. Never mind. And you're fine. And neither one of them is particularly suspicious about that, but it kind of comes back to them. And we see various things going on behind the scenes with, again, this kind of creepy character by John Ryan called Dr. Schneider seems to be directing like duplicates of these people to be made, but they're obviously physical because they can breathe, they can eat, they have respiratory systems, they have sensitive skin and everything. They're not really robots so much as clones, but programmable clones, and we don't really know why they're doing this at that point. Then for some reason, and I'll never quite figure this out, Duffy decides he's going to take them to see the ruins of Westworld. And they go in and they're looking around, and Peter Fonda sees a trap door in the floor, and he goes down into a service tunnel, and he's looking around kind of behind the scenes while Duffy is giving Tracy the tour of Westworld. And he meets up with eventually, he keeps going down these corridors, and he meets up with a serviceman that's played by Stuart Margolin, and that's Harry. And Harry has he has a robot partner who's faceless, and he only has one eye, and he calls him Clark after Clark Kent from Superman. And he says, what are you doing down here? You shouldn't be here. And he says, well, I'm looking for the inside scoop, and is there anything you can tell me? And he's very hesitant to help him. He says, you got to get out of here now. And kind of chases him off, and they, I can't really talk to you. And so he leaves, but he kind of gives him the feeling that if he sees him again, he can tell him something. So he goes back up, and Blythe Danner is wondering where the heck he went, and finally he shows back up. This has sort of put Duffy on alert that maybe he's nosing around where he shouldn't, and he kind of becomes suspicious, but nothing overt happens at that point in the movie. As it goes on, and again, I'm not going to spoil this by telling you every single plot detail, but things kind of escalate, and there's one room, it turns out, that even Harry can't get into. Only the quote-unquote 700s, which are the latest models of robots, which are almost indistinguishable from humans, can go in, and he doesn't really know why. There's a kind of a goofy sequence where they try to break in, and they're attacked by these robot ninjas that are suddenly created from like nothing out of this machine, and they never explain that scene really, except I think that Tracy says they said they were going to do a Samurai World. And apparently that's kind of a test for that, as they created these ninjas or samurai who come after them. They managed to evade them. Then after that point, there's eventually they find out the truth. They get into the blue door, and they see that the Russian diplomat and the Russian general and the Japanese diplomat are being duplicated, or have been duplicated, and they're being programmed. And they also see that they have been duplicated, and their duplicates are being programmed. And Tracy's duplicate says, I will not harm Westworld. I will not do anything against Westworld, and I'll do what Westworld tells me. And now they know the truth, that they're creating these robot duplicates of people to basically bolster the image of Westworld and not to say anything negative about it. So now they have to, and the duplicate also says, I will destroy my original. So now they know what's going on, and now they're in danger. And again, without giving too much the ending plot away, they have a confrontation with the duplicates. You don't really know until the end whether it's the originals or the duplicates that survived. The key is that Chuck kisses Tracy and figures, that their passion can't be faked. But again, you're still not quite sure until finally the Tracy duplicate stumbles down the stairs. She's been wounded but not killed, and says, "You let the wrong ones go." And Peter Fonda, turns back and gives the finger to Dr. Schneider as they leave. And now there's nothing they can do. He's already called in the story to his paper, and it'll be in the news, by the time they get back. It wasn't particularly well received, and it really wasn't that good a film. One thing that I really disliked about it is that Peter Fonda is not convincing. He sounds like he's, reading his lines as he goes, like he's making up his lines as he goes along. He obviously was not enthusiastic about the project. Blythe Danner is much better. She seems like she's actually into the role, but because they're supposed to play off each other, that relationship doesn't work as well because his line reading is just very wooden. Uh, some of the other minor characters are good. Stuart Margolin was very good as Harry. John Ryan was good as the villainous Dr. Schneider, and uh, Arthur Hill was very good as Duffy, who turns out not to be who you think he is. And there's a very sinister turn there again, which I won't spoil. Again, one that I can't say that I don't recommend it. I recommend you watch it just because it's interesting, but it's certainly not as good as Westworld.